Diana, Princess of Wales, has been seriously injured in a car accident in Paris.
They were apparently being pursued by paparazzi.
A groundbreaking discovery has sent shockwaves across the globe, and it all centers on the final resting place of Princess Diana. Using advanced AI technology, researchers uncovered something inside her tomb that no one ever expected, an astonishing revelation that has left experts completely speechless. For decades, mysteries and conspiracy theories have surrounded Diana's tragic death, but this latest finding has reignited worldwide fascination. What exactly did the AI uncover, and why is it sparking such intense debate? Today, we reveal the stunning truth behind this discovery. The night the world stood still. Before we dive into what artificial intelligence has just uncovered in Princess Diana's tomb, we must first return to the night that changed history, August 31st, 1997, a date burned into the collective memory of an entire generation. In Paris, the city of light, Diana, the most photographed woman on Earth, had just finished dinner at the Ritz Hotel with her companion, Dodi Fayed. The pair, weary of the flashing cameras that had followed them all day, attempted to leave quietly through the back entrance. At 12:20 a.m., their black Mercedes S280 glided into the streets of Paris with Henri Paul at the wheel, trying to outmaneuver the relentless paparazzi, trailing them on motorcycles. What happened next unfolded in seconds but has been analyzed for decades. The car accelerated as it approached the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. At 12:23 a.m., tragedy struck. The vehicle lost control and slammed head-on into the 13th concrete pillar inside the tunnel. The sound of screeching tires and shattering metal echoed through the night. The aftermath was devastating. Dodi Fayed and Henri Paul were killed instantly. Diana was pulled from the wreckage alive, but gravely injured. First responders described a haunting scene, camera flashes still popping as medics worked desperately to save her. She was rushed to the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital, where doctors performed emergency surgery. Despite every effort, the People's Princess succumbed to her injuries just before 4 a.m. She was only 36 years old. When the news broke, the world seemed to stand still. Television networks cut into programming. Radios announced the unthinkable. Outside Kensington Palace, seas of mourners laid flowers until they covered the gates entirely. Across continents, people lit candles, held vigils, and wept for a woman they had never met,
watched her on television, or read about her in books and newspapers,
but felt they truly knew. But as grief turned into reflection, questions emerged. How could such a tragedy happen in the middle of a major city? Why had standard VIP security protocols been ignored? Why did the emergency response take so long? Princess Diana's death was not only a personal heartbreak, it became a global mystery. And while the world mourned, the unanswered questions surrounding that night grew louder. Questions that, as we will soon uncover, may have found their most shocking answers not in a police report, but within her tomb, and revealed only when artificial intelligence was finally brought into the investigation. But could Diana's death have left hidden clues we all overlooked? Stay with us. What comes next may change everything. Secrets buried with a princess. After the heartbreak of that August night, the world watched as Diana made her final journey home. Her coffin, draped in the royal standard and adorned with white flowers, was flown from Paris to London. Crowds lined the streets, silent and tearful, as her body was taken first to the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace, then to Kensington Palace, the place she had once called home. On September 6, 1997, London came to a standstill. More than 1 million mourners filled the streets, and an estimated 2.5 billion people watched on television as 8 Welsh guards carried Diana's coffin through the city. Behind them walked her brother, Charles Spencer, flanked by Prince Charles, Prince Philip, and her 2 sons, young William and Harry, their faces etched with grief. The world will never forget that image. 2 boys walking behind their mother's coffin, a nation walking with them. After the public ceremony at Westminster Abbey, the cameras were turned off. Diana's family withdrew from the crowds and returned to Althorpe, the Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire. There, in a private ceremony, witnessed only by her closest relatives, Diana was laid to rest. but the location of her burial was as striking as it was unusual. Rather than being interred at Westminster Abbey or St. George's Chapel, the traditional resting places for members of the royal family, Diana was buried on a secluded island in the center of a lake at Althorpe, a decision made by her brother. This choice was deeply symbolic, a break from royal tradition, and a statement that Diana belonged to the people, not the institution. The island's still waters would serve as a natural barrier, protecting her grave from intrusion and giving her sons a place to grieve in peace. Her coffin was lead-lined, as is customary for royalty, making it extremely heavy, nearly a quarter of a ton, and ensuring her remains would be preserved for centuries. The grave was marked with a simple white stone, surrounded by 36 oak trees, one for each year of her life. Yet this decision to seal her tomb so completely, combined with the royal family's silence, only deepened public fascination. Whispers began to circulate. What was being hidden? Was there something buried with Diana that the world was never meant to see? In time, Althorpe became not just a place of mourning, but a symbol of mystery, a silent guardian of secrets that would stay locked away for nearly 3 decades. The failure of human investigations. In the days and months after Princess Diana's death, investigators on both sides of the Channel worked feverishly to piece together what happened in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The French authorities were the first to release their conclusions. Henri Paul, the driver of Diana's car, had been intoxicated, driving at dangerous speeds and trying to evade aggressive paparazzi when the fatal crash occurred. Their report called it a tragic accident, fueled by reckless driving and relentless press pursuit. Years later, the British launched their own exhaustive review, Operation Paget, led by Lord Stevens. It was one of the most extensive inquiries in modern history, producing thousands of pages of evidence.
Lady Diana Frances Spencer, the Princess of Wales, was pronounced dead.
Operation Paget interviewed more than 300 witnesses, reconstructed the crash timeline. In the end, it too concluded that Diana's death was the result of a combination of speed, alcohol, and bad luck. But even as these investigations wrapped up, cracks in the official story began to show. Henri Paul's toxicology results, for instance, painted a confusing picture. Some blood samples showed high levels of alcohol and prescription medication, yet eyewitnesses insisted he did not appear drunk just hours earlier. Other experts questioned whether the samples had been properly handled, or even if they truly belonged to Paul. Then there was the question of the route. Security specialists openly wondered why Diana's car was driven into a tunnel, a space with no escape routes and poor lighting, rather than taking a safer, more direct path, leaving troubling gaps in the timeline. Even the crash scene itself raised questions. Some critical car parts vanished from evidence storage before they could be tested, and certain items, including pieces of the wrecked Mercedes, were contaminated during collection. The ambulance response was unusually slow, despite the location being in central Paris, prompting speculation that Diana might have survived had she reached the hospital sooner. For the public, these unanswered questions became fertile ground for suspicion. Whispers of tampering, cover-ups, and shadowy forces at work spread across newspapers, documentaries, and late-night talk shows. Every inconsistency fed the idea that there was more to Diana's death than anyone was admitting. The human investigators had done everything they could with the tools they had, but the gaps remained, gaps that would only grow more suspicious with time. The world was left with a puzzle that traditional methods could not solve, waiting for technology advanced enough to confront the impossible. But what if the answers weren't in witness reports or police files at all, but hidden within her untouched tomb? Stay with us to uncover the mystery. The tomb nobody could touch. For nearly 3 decades, the island at Althorpe was a place of stillness, a sanctuary cut off from the noise of the world. Diana's final resting place sat alone at the center of Oval Lake. No one disturbed the grave of the people's princess. Visitors could approach only as far as the memorial temple at the edge of the grounds. The island itself remained private, guarded not by soldiers, but by silence. That silence, however, was not empty. It was filled with questions. Some believed Diana had been buried with personal letters and secret documents, pieces of a life cut short that might reveal what she knew, what she feared, and who she trusted in those final months. Others whispered that certain items in her coffin had been altered or tampered with before burial, perhaps to hide evidence that contradicted the official narrative of her death. And yet, despite the theories swirling for years, no one dared open the tomb. Part of this was tradition. Royal burials are meant to remain undisturbed for generations. To break that rule would be to break with centuries of protocol. But there was more at play than tradition. To pry open the tomb risked turning her grave into a spectacle, the very thing they had fought to prevent. The monarchy, too, had its reasons for caution. Reopening Diana's tomb could have ignited a firestorm of renewed public scrutiny, dragging the royal family back into the controversies they had worked so hard to move past. Every detail, from her personal effects to the state of her remains, could have been interpreted as evidence in the court of public opinion. And so, for 27 years, her resting place remained untouched. But time has a way of loosening even the strongest seals. Subtle environmental changes threatened the preservation of the tomb, and new technology offered a chance to answer old questions with unprecedented precision. Slowly, the unthinkable became inevitable. When the decision was finally made to unseal the grave, it was done under the strictest secrecy. The world would soon discover that the tomb had been keeping more than just a princess. It had been guarding a story, and that story was about to be told. But what exactly was the tomb concealing? And which investigative method will uncover it now? Stick with us. The answers will leave you questioning everything. Age of artificial intelligence. For 27 years, Princess Diana's death remained one of the most analyzed tragedies in modern history, yet one that stubbornly resisted full explanation. Human investigators had sifted through police reports, autopsy records, and hours of testimony, but every conclusion seemed to leave as many questions as it answered. Then came a new kind of investigator, one without human bias, fatigue, or political pressure: artificial intelligence. In the last decade, AI has transformed nearly every field of science, from medicine to astronomy to law enforcement. But its most powerful contribution may be its ability to see patterns invisible to the human mind. Unlike human detectives, AI can ingest thousands of documents, cross-reference witness statements, and scan through decades of evidence in minutes, where a team of investigators might spend months analyzing a single lead.
I don't always read that. People very willing to tell me that.
AI can process every lead simultaneously, highlighting anomalies, flagging contradictions, and calculating probabilities with cold mathematical precision. This new investigation began with digitizing everything: 1,947 pages of police reports, crash site photographs, autopsy notes, toxicology data, and even grainy CCTV stills from that night in Paris. But it didn't stop at paperwork. Forensic teams used state-of-the-art imaging to create 3D scans of Diana's preserved remains and the items buried with her, then fed that data into machine learning models trained to detect microfractures, subtle patterns of injury, and even traces of environmental exposure. The AI's job was simple: look for patterns no human had ever seen. Its neural networks compared Henri Paul's toxicology results across different labs, mapped the exact timeline of the Mercedes movements down to the second, and cross-referenced those data points with Parisian traffic camera logs. It used natural language processing to analyze every witness statement, flagging words and phrases statistically linked with deception or coached testimony. Then came the most revolutionary step: predictive reconstruction. Using a combination of crash physics simulations and historical medical data, the system created a probability model of Diana's survivability under different conditions: speed, impact angle, and emergency response time. This allowed investigators to ask the most haunting question of all: could she have lived if events had played out differently? The results were startling. The AI didn't just confirm known facts, It revealed inconsistencies that had gone unnoticed for decades. Timeline gaps that had once been dismissed as clerical errors now lined up into precise 6-hour windows of unaccounted activity. Subtle contradictions in witness statements formed clusters that suggested coordinated storylines. Even the arrangement of personal artifacts in her coffin showed patterns inconsistent with a standard burial, hinting that something might have been altered before the tomb was sealed. For the first time, the investigation was no longer limited by human memory or flawed forensic techniques from the 1990s. The past was being reanalyzed through a lens that could not be bribed, swayed, or silenced. And what I was about to uncover would leave experts and the world absolutely speechless. What the I saw first. When Diana's tomb was finally opened under the cover of night, investigators were stunned by what they saw. The lead-lined coffin had done its job with near-perfect precision. After nearly 3 decades, Diana's remains and the items buried with her were remarkably well preserved. For forensic scientists, this was nothing short of extraordinary. It meant they had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to apply technologies that did not exist in 1997. The first step was full-spectrum scanning. Using advanced 3D imaging and high-resolution CT technology, investigators captured every detail of Diana's skeletal structure and remaining tissues without disturbing her remains.
Have you any comment to make about that?
Lady Di.
No comment.
These scans were then fed into AI-assisted forensic software, which compared them to archived autopsy reports, hospital records from Paris, and the findings of Operation Paget. What the AI reconstructed was chilling. The system mapped out every fracture, every internal injury, and every trace of trauma sustained in the crash. It then overlaid this digital reconstruction with the documented injuries from 1997. The comparison revealed subtle but critical discrepancies. Some injuries noted in the original reports appeared to have been overstated, while others, including microfractures near the rib cage and small vascular ruptures, were missing entirely. Most striking was what the AI discovered about Diana's heart injury. Official reports had concluded that she suffered a catastrophic tear to the pulmonary vein, a wound that led to massive internal bleeding. The AI's reconstruction confirmed the injury but revealed that the tear might have been smaller than originally believed. According to its predictive model, Diana's chances of survival could have been significantly higher if emergency intervention had been swifter. Then came the discovery that stunned even the medical experts, evidence of a previously undiagnosed health condition. By analyzing trace biological markers preserved in her tissues, AI-assisted pathology detected signs of a genetic predisposition to vascular fragility, a condition that could make even minor trauma far more dangerous. In 1997, this would have been undetectable. Today, the AI identified it with a probability confidence of over 92%. This revelation changed everything. If Diana had been living with this hidden condition, it could explain why her injuries proved fatal so quickly. But it also raised uncomfortable questions.
I'm supposed to have my head down the loo for most of the day.
She did tell me that.
Should her medical team have detected warning signs earlier? Could specialized treatment have saved her if the condition had been known? Even more unsettling was the AI's analysis of the burial itself. The arrangement of certain artifacts in the coffin, including her jewelry box and locket, appeared inconsistent with the official burial records. The system flagged this as a potential sign of post-mortem tampering. For investigators, these findings were a turning point. This was no longer about rereading old evidence. This was about rewriting what we thought we knew. AI was not just confirming the past, it was challenging it. And the deeper it looked, the stranger the picture became. But if even her coffin tells a different story, what might her personal belongings reveal? Stay with us. The truth may be stranger still. The personal artifacts. Among the most moving moments of the investigation came when Diana's personal effects were removed from the coffin and examined under the controlled, respectful gaze of the forensic team. These were not just relics. They were fragments of a life, sealed away for nearly 3 decades. Every item was catalogued, photographed, and scanned before being subjected to AI-assisted analysis. The first object was a small, delicately crafted gold locket. Though tarnished with time, its clasp still held firm. When opened, it revealed two tiny photographs, one of William, the other of Harry. The images, though faded, were digitally enhanced with AI image restoration software. The result was heartbreaking. The locket's photos showed two young boys, smiling, frozen in time. Forensic anthropologists noted that the locket had been found close to Diana's sternum, suggesting she had been buried with it over her heart. This simple detail spoke volumes. Even in death, her children were at the center of her world. Then came the jewelry box, far more mysterious in its contents. Inside was a small folded piece of paper, a handwritten note, its ink faded to near illegibility. Conventional analysis would have risked damaging the fragile paper, but advanced multispectral imaging allowed investigators to capture every stroke of the pen without touching it. AI algorithms enhanced the contrast and reconstructed missing sections of the handwriting, revealing words that had been lost for decades. The message was short but haunting. Diana spoke of fear, of being watched, of being silenced, of forces moving against her that she could not fully name.
Can turn the nourishment of the body into a painful attack on themselves.
Though investigators have kept the exact wording confidential, those who read it described it as a cry for help written in the final months of her life. AI handwriting analysis confirmed with near total certainty that the letter was indeed written by Diana, comparing it to known samples from her personal correspondence. Finally, there was a crystal charm inscribed with two simple words: always believe. To the casual observer, it might have seemed like a decorative trinket, but friends of Diana later revealed that this was one of her personal mantras, a phrase she repeated to remind herself to stay hopeful, even in the darkest moments. What made these discoveries so powerful was not just their emotional weight, but what the AI revealed about them. The handwriting's pressure patterns suggested it had been written quickly, almost urgently. Trace residue analysis on the charm indicated it had been handled frequently, perhaps as a talisman. Together, these items painted a picture of a woman both terrified and determined, anxious about the dangers surrounding her, yet still clinging to hope and to her love for her sons. For investigators, this was no longer just a cold forensic exercise. The tomb had given Diana back her voice, and that voice spoke of danger, love, and an enduring strength that refused to be buried. The world now had to reckon with what she had tried to say before it was too late. The statistical impossibilities. With Diana's personal artifacts catalogued and her injuries digitally reconstructed, investigators turned to the numbers. Every piece of evidence, from crash site reports to emergency service logs, was fed into a single, unified AI model. For the first time, the data from 1997 could be viewed as one interconnected web rather than isolated fragments. The results were staggering. The AI began by analyzing the official crash timeline. It cross-referenced CCTV timestamps, eyewitness statements, and Parisian traffic data, aligning them with the forensic reconstruction of the Mercedes's final route. The model flagged a critical 6-hour window in the hours before the crash, a block of time in which Henri Paul's movements could not be fully accounted for. Human investigators had dismissed this as a gap in documentation. The AI, however, detected a probability pattern suggesting coordinated activity, multiple independent variables, phone calls, vehicle sightings, and staff schedules, converging in ways that were mathematically almost impossible to occur by chance. Then came the emergency response data. AI timeline reconstruction revealed that the ambulance carrying Diana took significantly longer to reach the hospital than expected. Not minutes longer, but a delay pattern that matched what the system classified as operational pacing. In other words, the timing anomalies were consistent with a controlled delay rather than random inefficiency. But the most disturbing findings came when the AI combined the physical evidence from the tomb with the crash data. The arrangement of Diana's artifacts in her coffin, flagged earlier as inconsistent, was modeled against burial protocols and post-mortem handling records. The statistical probability that these items had shifted naturally during transport or burial was calculated at less than 0.01%. In other words, the chance that the artifacts were arranged as they were without human interference was virtually zero. When all these anomalies were combined, the unexplained 6-hour gap, the emergency response delay pattern, the inconsistencies in burial records, the AI calculated the overall probability of random coincidence. The result? Less than 1 in 10,000. This was the moment the investigation crossed a threshold. What human investigators had written off as a coincidence or a clerical error now appeared as part of a coordinated sequence of events. Whether the coordination was deliberate or the result of a chain of systemic failures remained unclear, but statistically, it was no longer plausible to call Diana's death a simple accident. Forensic experts were shaken. These were not the conclusions of conspiracy theorists, but the product of hard mathematics.
But I can't always wear what I'd like to on engagement because it's just not practical.
Algorithmic detection of patterns too precise to ignore. The evidence found in the tomb had become the missing piece of a puzzle that, when solved, revealed a picture far more complex than anyone had dared to imagine. But if the patterns already defied chance, what final truth could the full picture expose? Stay with us. The revelation will leave you stunned. The revelation that shook the world. When the investigation team finally compiled every scan, every data point, and every AI-generated model, what emerged was nothing short of earth-shattering. The tomb that had been sealed for nearly 3 decades had not only preserved Diana's remains, it had preserved the truth. The AI's findings painted a chillingly complete picture. First came the confirmation of Diana's hidden medical vulnerability, a genetic predisposition to vascular fragility that no one in 1997 could have detected. This discovery reframed everything we thought we knew about that night. It meant that Diana's life hung in a far more delicate balance than anyone realized. Even relatively minor injuries could have triggered the catastrophic internal bleeding that took her life. Then came the discovery that sent shockwaves through the team. Subtle but undeniable evidence that her burial had not been as untouched as history claimed. The AI's spatial analysis proved that her locket, jewelry box, and crystal charm had been repositioned sometime between the funeral and the sealing of the tomb. Whether this was an innocent oversight or a deliberate act remains a mystery, but the statistical probability of natural movement was almost zero. Someone had been inside Diana's coffin, and that fact alone changed the narrative forever. The AI's timeline analysis added another layer of discomfort. It demonstrated, with mathematical certainty, that too many factors surrounding her final hours, the unexplained 6-hour gap in Henry Paul's movements, the improbable route through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, and the precisely delayed emergency response, converge far beyond the threshold of random chance. The combined probability of all these anomalies occurring naturally was less than 0.01%. This was no longer speculation. This was hard data. For the investigators, it was a sobering moment. AI hadn't created a conspiracy theory. It had simply illuminated patterns hidden in plain sight. The tomb had given them the last missing pieces, and those pieces told a story that could no longer be dismissed as a coincidence. The revelation left experts speechless, and the world with a haunting question. Was Diana's death truly an accident? A tragic twist of fate? Or had the forces she feared in her final months succeeded in silencing her forever? The island at Althorpe is quiet once again, but it is no longer just a place of mourning. It has become the keeper of a truth too powerful to ignore, a truth that, thanks to artificial intelligence, can finally be seen. So what do you think? Was Princess Diana's death a fate or a design? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more shocking revelations.